Lechi lach to a land that I will show you. Lech lecha to a place you do not know. Lechi lach on your journey I will bless you. And you.
So I want to introduce Akiva Gersh. He is an educator, writer, and speaker. He's been working in the fields of Jewish and Israel education for 20 years, teaching Jewish texts, Jewish values, and Jewish history, Zionism, Israeli history, culture, and more. He does a lot of work with Aliyah, with Olim as well, and speaks to groups in Israel and the US about various topics related to Judaism and Israel. He also writes a blog at Times of Israel and published a book in 2017 entitled Becoming Israeli. And I know he has a website, which we'd love to have him share. He also spoke to our group one time in the past, and we're lucky to have him back. So take it away, Akiva, please.
Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation to be here. It's really, really great to be here. Yes, so much to talk about, especially with the topic that we have on hand. I will just right now, so I don't forget later, just share a couple of my own points of contact that you can find me out there on the great World Wide Web, as we used to officially call it. But one website I'm just putting in right now, hopefully I spelled it right, is a lot of, it's kind of like a project in progress of putting a lot of my own online Israel education online and available to people. And I'll just put one more for now, and that is the book that I wrote, and you can find that as well. Now, I'll just get this really quickly out of the way, because not only do I not usually do this or say this, I never actually do, but I was speaking with Julia today, and she said that she wouldn't be able to be part, and that's more something that she would have done. So I'm just going to do this really quickly and get this over with, because I don't like this kind of stuff. But I'm putting in my email address. First of all, if anybody ever wants to email me, you can feel free to be in touch with me. All right. But she did say also just for PayPal purchases, if someone's heart is moved, as we like to say. All right, but I'll put that in there. That's my email address. It's also used for PayPal, and it's out there in the world, in the chat, and now we can move on. So as you heard, my name is Akiva Gersh. I'm originally from New York, as you might hear from my accent. I'm not sure if I still have that New York accent. I've been living in Israel now for 17 years. And yeah, so you know, I really enjoyed our time together last time, and I've had the real blessing and opportunity to share a lot over this past year online, in Zooms and virtual events about Israel, about Judaism, on a wide range of topics. And this topic that Julia asked me to speak about is one that's very, very close to my heart. And maybe I'll just start with my own personal connection to it. And then we'll go from there. There is, as you can imagine, the topic being Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism, and really, you know, what does it mean to us and what can it mean to us? I just want to reread the official title. What is Kabbalah? A look into Jewish mysticism with me. Hello. And I wrote like a little blurb description. I'm not sure if that got out there as well, but I'll just reread it just to, you know, frame what we're doing here. What is Kabbalah? What is mysticism? We will discover some of the most important teachings of the Jewish spiritual tradition, see how they are essential to Judaism's values and goals, and how implementing them into our lives can change our lives for the better. Quite an agenda, I know. You need a lifetime to learn about those things, and we're going to try to do something in less than an hour. But let it even be a beginning for those who haven't kind of dove into this field, these topics. If you have, and you have some experience, great. I hope it adds to your understanding. I hope it adds to your connection. And again, if this is brand new, let this be, you know, Kabbalah 101, so to speak. And I hope an introduction that will inspire you to go further with it, because of course, in an hour, we're not going to come out of here Kabbalah experts. And I am in no way, shape, or form an expert on Kabbalah. I'm a person who loves learning from the spiritual tradition of the Jewish tradition, and have gained a lot of meaning for my own life from it. So I'll just start maybe from the beginning a bit, my own personal connection. I grew up in New York, as I said. I didn't grow up, I probably look very religious to everybody here, right? I didn't grow up religious. On some level, I grew up the opposite of religious. I was Jewish, but I wasn't very connected at all. I went to public school, K through 12. Let me just say, if anyone has any questions, put it in the chat, and I'll make time at the end to look at that. If it's a burning question and you have to ask it right now, just unmute yourself, like Alana said, I think. And yeah.
I actually disabled the unmute because people wind up shouting and doing weird things, and I have to hunt them down and mute them. So if you have a burning question, message me directly, and I'll unmute you if we need to ask it.
Okay, and I do see the chat. I have it open on my screen. So if it's a question for the end, just put it in there so you don't forget. If it's a burning question, say, "Can I ask this now?" And I'll hopefully see that. All right, or Alana will. All right. But again, long story short, I didn't grow up very connected Jewishly. As I got older into my teenage years, I was drifting even further away from whatever I did have Jewishly. I got to the point where in my own life, I barely considered myself Jewish. If somebody asked me if I was Jewish, I wanted to tell them no. That's how disconnected I was. But the guilt of the Holocaust kept me saying at least this answer. This is the answer I would give them. I'd say yes by birth, but not by belief. That was my prepackaged answer. In my own family, specifically on my mother's side, her parents, my grandparents, their whole generation experienced the Holocaust very intensely. My grandparents on my mom's side left Poland years before the war, but most of their families didn't, and entire families and large families were completely wiped out in the Holocaust. And that was something that was with me from childhood. I knew about the Holocaust from a very young age, and that's what kept me kind of continuing to say at least yes to the answer, are you Jewish? By the time I got to college, can I just say one thing, because this has come up a lot in a lot of Zooms I've given, I'm not sure why. Just because I belonged to a synagogue when I was growing up does not mean that I was religious, and doesn't mean that my family was religious. For some reason, I keep getting that question. I got it as a private question. I'm not going to say the name of the person who asked it. It's fine. And it's totally fine that you asked me that question. But my experience growing up was not religious. We did not have a religious lifestyle. We did not have a religious home. And that's just the reality of my childhood. And that's just how it is. I'm sorry if I hope I'm not coming off with a little heat, but I've been asked that same question many times, and it's people like questioning my own childhood, which is like a little weird for me. So yeah, anyway, we'll move on, okay? That's how I grew up. I did not grow up religious at all, okay? In college, I was really distant from Judaism, and you're gonna see how this all fits into the topic very soon, don't worry. And in college, I started to meet people and read books and have life experiences that I never had before that really opened my eyes to this thing called spirituality. And I didn't really understand what it was at the time. I was like 18, 19 years old, first couple of years in college, but I knew I wanted it. It sounded attractive. I wanted to know more about it. And I did. And that kind of brought me through a process, a journey of 3 years that I call my spiritual search. I was looking for more spirituality in my life. I was looking for more spiritual understanding. I was looking for more wisdom teachings. I was looking for more ideas that can guide my life in a positive kind of way. And of course, like most people going through a spiritual journey when they're not connected to a specific religion, especially Jews, all right, I dabbled a little bit in this and a little bit in that, took some yoga classes and bought some books about Buddhism and the like, and Native Americanism and shamanism and so many different isms. And I was inspired and I was impressed and I was in awe. And I kept asking myself the question, why don't I have this? Why don't we have this in our own tradition? Why, I grew up with a Judaism with, I'm just saying it how it is. My experience of Judaism growing up was that it was boring, it was irrelevant, and it was not meaningful, and it was definitely not spiritual. That was my experience of Judaism growing up. And by the time I got to be 18, 19, 20 years old, and I was starting to get interested in spirituality, I was looking everywhere but Judaism for it, because Judaism was now a closed door, because of course that doesn't have it. Now, long story short, I'm not going to go into all the details. I started meeting people, having experiences, and getting connected to certain books that started to show me a whole new side of Judaism, right? That Judaism had spiritual teachings, had very ancient and deep and meaningful teachings of wisdom. I was blown away. The very first book I bought on this, journey of rediscovering Judaism, I was 19 years old. It was a book, The Essential Kabbalah. I'm not sure if anyone has read it or knows it, by Daniel Matt, who's a very well-known professor in America who teaches Kabbalah. He's one of the leading teachers of Kabbalah in America, Daniel Matt. I read that book, The Essential Kabbalah, and I was blown away. I was like, wait a minute. Judaism believes in all these things. Judaism is spiritual. Judaism has spiritual teachings. I just simply didn't know. Of course, I knew that Judaism had values and ethics, and be a good person, and love your neighbor like yourself, and give to the poor, and donate. I knew all of that, the ethics and the values. Of course, I knew that. But there's so many more depths to what Judaism is about, and that I didn't know. And when I started reading that book, and then another book, and more books, I started to discover a whole new world that I just wasn't shown growing up, not by my community, not by my Hebrew school teachers, not by anybody, really. I never heard about it. And it's kind of a funny thing, the book I was reading, The Essential Kabbalah, it became my bathroom book. If anybody knows, the humor in that, you're not really supposed to learn Torah in the bathroom. At the time, I didn't know that. And so, sorry for getting a little bit too intimate, but that was like my bathroom book. It was like at the, learning the Kabbalah, while going to the bathroom. And but really, it started to change my life. Really changed my life. Now, at that point, if you came up to me and said, Akiva, do you want to become religious? And are you going to become religious? I'm like, no, not a chance, right? I had such a negative feeling towards Judaism as a religion, as a religious path, unfortunately, for various reasons, which I'm not going to get into right now, but things I saw and communities I lived near, whatever. Again, not going to get into all that, not the time or the place. But I definitely was into the spiritual teachings of my own people's tradition that I was starting to learn. Time goes on, I'm getting more and more into this, and I'm having more experiences, meeting more people, reading more books. And towards the very end of my time in college, I'm like, you know what? I want to check out Judaism. This is what I'm checking out, not Buddhism, not other things, Judaism. That's my people's ism. That's my people's ancient tradition. And I want to learn more and more about it. Now that inspired me to go to Israel. A year after college, I graduated college. I worked for a year, saved up money, went traveling, and I went to Israel. And I spent about a half a year in Israel. And most of that time I spent in the city of Tzfat. Okay, if anyone's been to Tzfat before, if you know about Tzfat, it's like the spiritual center of the Jewish world. Okay, it's the place you go and you forget about the rest of the world. I was in yeshiva there for the very first time in my life. I decided I'm going to Tzfat, and I was so impressed by the city and the people. And I found one English-speaking yeshiva there in the city, which is the only one. And I decided to sit down and start learning Torah for the first time in my life. I was 22 years old at the time. And right away, what did I want to learn? I wanted to learn Kabbalah, right? So I bought a book, in English, of course, because my Hebrew was really, really poor at the time. And, I go to like the classes that I was supposed to go to, but in my free time, I would sit outside on there's like a little merpeset, like a little balcony of the yeshiva overlooking the beautiful mountains, actually Mount Meron, which we'll get to. Okay. And I would learn this book of Kabbalah, and every now and then the head rabbi of the yeshiva would come out. It was a very, very small yeshiva. There's like 15 students, not even. He would come out. He's like, Akiva, what are you learning over there? And he'd be seeing me like reading this like deep Kabbalistic stuff. And he's like, maybe you should start with something a little simpler. I didn't know it at the time. This is like already over 20 years ago. The book I had bought was something called Sefer Yetzirah, which is one of the fundamental texts of Kabbalah. According to the Jewish tradition, it's one of the very, very first books ever written of Kabbalah. Sefer Yetzirah. It's a very short book, but Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan, who died in the 1980s, very young, but was a very prolific writer and very well-known teacher. He wrote a translation and a perush, a commentary on it. So, the book was this thick, although the actual original text is maybe, I don't know, like 70 lines. And I was reading this stuff, and the rabbi was like, maybe you should start with something a little simpler. So he gave me a book, also by Aryeh Kaplan, called I forget the name of it. I still have it on my bookshelf downstairs. It's an introduction to Kabbalah, basically, which once I started reading that, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes much more sense. Anyway, I share this with you because that was my first attraction to rediscovering Judaism, was the spiritual teachings in the Jewish tradition, right? The Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism. That's, for me, really what kind of brought me back, so to speak. Although I like to say it brought me forward, right, to a new understanding of Judaism. But that was my first. Inner Space. Thank you. Someone just said it to me. Thank you. Inner Space by Aryeh Kaplan. Amazing book. I read it cover to cover and was so inspired. And then the rabbi eventually was like, well, maybe you should learn a little bit Jewish law, how to keep Shabbat, how to put on tefillin, like the simple stuff first. And eventually I got his point, but I never stopped learning the Kabbalah. And just one more thing before we get into specific Kabbalistic teachings is I eventually realized, wow, the Kabbalah is very hard to understand. And eventually I came up to the teaching that said, you know what? Before you learn Kabbalah, you should really be 40 years old. I was 22 at the time, right? And I started to understand from my teachers that the reason why somebody should be 40 years old traditionally, many people say that's different in our world today because our world is just so chaotic and crazy. And that more than ever, people need the Kabbalah, even at ages younger than 40, but of all ages. But the reason that people traditionally need to be 40 years old in order to learn Kabbalah is, one, they need to learn so many other things first, right? Before they can even understand the Kabbalah. There's so much of Torah. There's the Chumash, right? The Bible itself, the Tanakh, all the commentaries. There's the Mishnah and the commentaries. There's the Gemara, which will take you forever to learn. Then there's all the books of Jewish law. I mean, mountains of text you need to learn before you can even start touching the Kabbalah. So there was that one aspect, just time spent learning other things, and also being more grounded in the world. Someone 18 years old, 20, 22 years old is learning these deep secrets of the Kabbalah. They're not as grounded in this world. They haven't maybe, had a job or had to take care of people, having a family, raising children, whatever it might be that's going to ground them in this world. And by the time you're 40 years old, most people would have had at least one, if not many, experiences that will ground them in this world so they don't literally get taken away by the teachings of the Kabbalah. Now, it doesn't mean that every teaching of the Kabbalah is going to make someone fly away, but there are some very, very esoteric teachings of the Kabbalah that could really confuse people spiritually. Yes, it's the Essential Kabbalah by Daniel Matt. I see that in the chat. All right. And I'll just say this for now. There's many different parts of the Kabbalah. Okay, there's parts of the Kabbalah that are more accessible to everybody, you and I alike, all of us. And there's other parts of the Kabbalah that are literally, for the few of every generation to go into. Okay, because even if I can understand what the words are saying, like each word, what it says, I can't understand the concepts easily at all. And I'll probably need to study another 40 years until I'm 80, right, in order to really get into those levels of Kabbalah. There's even, and I'm just going to mention it for a second and not go there because I know nothing of it, there is even something called practical Kabbalah, which would go into the area of magic. Okay, now a lot of people don't know that about Judaism. Judaism has everything. What I've learned over the past 25 years of my own spiritual journey, Judaism has it all, right? If you like something in another tradition, as long as it's not like idol worship or something really far out there, you're probably going to find a parallel in Judaism. Angels, forget about it. Judaism talks about angels all over the place, right? From the Chumash, from the Torah, from the Bible itself to the Kabbalah. All right. For those who like, all kinds of supernatural beings and demons and all kinds of other things, it's all over the place. Look at the Gemara. It has all these crazy stories about demons, right? And all these spiritual beings. I have a friend in Israel who teaches at Haifa University. His field of expertise is magic and Judaism. And he teaches all of this from a Kabbalistic mystical perspective. Okay, now that's not the main part of this talk here. But now I want to get into some specific teachings of the Kabbalah. Okay, and I just want to say, as a preface to that, there's lots of prefaces here, is we're human beings, right? We're living in a world that on one level is very beautiful and gorgeous and inspiring. I step outside my house. We live in a very beautiful part of Pardes Chana here in Israel where I live, where there are houses around us, but if I step outside my front door, I don't easily see them, and all I see is trees and birds, and it's a really nice, it's not a very big nature patch, but it's a really beautiful one. And I walk outside my door so often, and I just look around, I'm like, what a beautiful world. This world is gorgeous. And an idea that I've been thinking about lately a lot is, Judaism traditionally talks about Gan Eden, right? The Garden of Eden, paradise, and people ask the questions throughout the ages, where is this place? Gan Eden. Where is Gan Eden? Where is the Garden of Eden? Where is paradise? And I have to say, just personally, this isn't something I normally share with people, but I feel comfortable with all of you guys, especially because you're on mute, is that I'm more and more feeling like Gan Eden is right here. Planet Earth is Gan Eden. This whole sphere that we're living on, and maybe I should just give a quick little background to why I'm thinking that lately. One of my side interests has been reading about the universe and planets and formation of planets and solar systems and galaxies and black holes and all these other things, and it's fascinating and really blowing my mind. And you see that in according to science today and scientists, like our understanding of the universe, as much as we have explored it thus far, which we know is still such a small percentage, but as much of the universe that we know of so far, we are the only inhabitable planet with water, atmosphere, life, diversity of life that we have on planet Earth. And so these are some of the thoughts that have been kind of inspiring this idea that I've been thinking about a lot lately, that we're living in this world of paradise. So why doesn't it always feel like that, right? Because with all due respect to humans, we've been given this amazing and also challenging thing called free choice. And we often, unfortunately and sadly enough, choose to use our free choice in negative and destructive ways. And so unfortunately, we brought so much destruction into the world and so much pain and so much suffering for ourselves and others that it blocks out our ability sometimes to see the beauty of this world. And you don't have to agree with this thought of mine. This is my own thought. You don't have to agree with it. But if you do agree with it, that this maybe is the paradise that we've been talking about for so long. If we just open up our eyes and see, and if we make better choices and make this into the world that it's meant to be. And we know that Judaism is so much about tikkun olam, about fixing the world, about making this world a better place. I mean, that is essential Judaism, like Judaism 101. And it ties deeply into the Kabbalah. And so maybe there I'll start with one of our first official teachings, is a lot of people don't know this, but the whole idea of tikkun olam, which so many Jews connect to today, and I think it's so beautiful, it comes from Kabbalah. The idea of tikkun olam comes from Kabbalah, okay? What is tikkun olam about? It's about fixing the world. Well, how do we fix the world? Really, right now, I'll give you 20 seconds. Put into the chat. How does Judaism encourage us to fix the world, to make the world a better place? Put some ideas. All right, so someone, even before I officially asked that question, talked about environmental issues. That's huge, right? Climate change, we're destroying the earth through our actions, 100%. Okay. Any other ideas? How does Judaism motivate us, encourage us to fix the world? What does tikkun olam look like in reality? We talk about it a lot, but what does it look like? Being my best self, love it. Yefeh, love it. Okay. We must gather okay, someone's going a little deeper already. Deborah, okay, we must gather the broken shards of God's vessels. We'll get there. All right, we'll get there. Let's see, maybe we can get one or two other ideas. How does Judaism encourage us? Save a person and save the world. Helping. Okay, but what does that mean to help others? Let's go more specific. Helping others, that's nice, but what does that mean? That means if I give someone a dollar, I just fix the world? Maybe yes. I'm just, but what does that mean to you guys? What does it mean, helping others? What does it mean to save a person? We're talking about feeding the hungry, providing homes for the homeless. Okay, Judaism is very practical, right? It's like, okay, I'm losing some of the chat here. Clocking after less, okay. Let me just go up a little bit. Any act that leaves the world a better place than how we found it, beautiful. Okay, great. Judaism is very practical, right? Action. Not just talking about it, not just thinking about it, acting on it, okay? But again, where does this come from? This idea comes from the Kabbalah. If you study the Kabbalah, all right, you see this idea of tikkun olam all over the place, okay? And not everyone knows that. Let me just give it to you like super briefly, like literally like Kabbalah 101, tikkun olam 101 from a Kabbalistic perspective. Okay, maybe some of you have heard this, like Deborah was already referencing it, so I'll give it over very briefly. But one of the ways to explain or describe Kabbalah is that it tells us what's behind the scenes, so to speak, and underneath the surface. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean in two main ways. One, in terms of the text, right? Now, when I say the text, I'm meaning the Torah, right? Because again, everyone has their own opinion. I respect everyone's opinion about the Torah. You believe it's divine, you don't believe it's divine. I love and respect you. Okay, it doesn't matter to me. That's everyone's personal choice. But Kabbalah, right, is tied in with traditional Judaism, which believes that the Torah came from God. Okay, that what's written in the Torah scroll came from God. All right, so Kabbalah, which is based on this idea and this understanding of the Torah, says there's the words of the Torah, and then there's underneath the words. There's this space in between. Maybe some of you have heard this, black fire and white fire, right? That there's the black fire of the Torah, and that's the written script. Those are the written words. And then there's all the white around the words on the page of the actual Torah scroll. And there's Torah in that also. And out of that comes the Kabbalah, so to speak. It's almost like the hidden spiritual commentary on the written word. And literally there are Kabbalistic books. I know at least one. There's a book that came out of a few hundred years ago from a rabbi in Poland whose name I'm forgetting right now, unfortunately, I'm sorry. But he wrote an entire book about one word of the Torah. One word. He wrote an entire book. And it's this idea that there's depths upon depths of every word, every letter, every verse of the Torah. And the Kabbalah goes deep into that. Now, the other facet of that is life. You know, we live our lives. We're running from one thing to the next, one day to the next, and we're living on the level of like what's galui, as we say, what's revealed. But there's things that are not revealed easily. There are things that are hidden, and the Kabbalah focuses on that as well. Why do things happen the way that they do? Right? Why is the world moving in the direction that it's moving? Why does it seem like there's so much evil in the world? Why does it seem like there's so much pain and suffering in the world? Why do things happen to me? Why did this thing happen to me? Why did that thing happen to that person? Right, the whys, the big whys, the big questions that we ask. And Kabbalah talks about this. And Kabbalah has answers. Right? So one of the big, questions that human beings in general ask is like, why? Why anything? But why this? Why that? Why that way? Right? Why does the world function the way it does? And the Kabbalah spends an enormous amount of time, an enormous amount of pages discussing these matters. And let's go back to one of the original questions that people ask is, why is there anything? What's this world all about? Why do there have to be anything? And the Kabbalah talks a lot about this. I'm going to give it over very, very briefly. The Kabbalah basically explains like this, that before there was anything, there was only God. Okay? Ein od milvado. There was nothing but God. It was all God. Now, what does that mean? I have no idea. We have no idea. We can't fathom this. It was what was before there was anything. And we're told by Judaism that we're not really supposed to go there. We're not really supposed to focus on what was before anything. Okay? But the Kabbalah says before there was anything, there was only God. God filled up the entire world. Again, whatever that even means. Now, because I'm a human being, I like to imagine what that might look like in my head. So I just think light. Just white light everywhere. And in fact, Kabbalah talks, often describes God as Or Ein Sof, the infinite light. That's a very common Kabbalistic descriptor for God, right? Or Ein Sof. Now, I know growing up, I heard the word God, I'm like, oh, God, I don't even like that name. I don't believe in God, and this is that. If someone maybe taught me the Or Ein Sof, the infinite light, maybe I would have believed in that more as a kid and as a teenager. I'm not sure. Just sounds a lot nicer. Anyway, The Kabbalah then goes on to say that at some point, and we don't understand why, and we'll probably never understand why, God had a desire. What was that desire? To give. God wanted to give. What does that desire mean? Where did the desire come from? And the Kabbalah usually says, Ein siba le'ratzon. Ein siba le'ratzon, which means there's no cause for desire. There's no way we can explain what that desire is about or where it came from. Okay? But God wanted to give. What's the existential or the cosmic problem with God giving at this point in time? If there's not, well, there's not even time at this point, but whatever. What's the problem with God giving? There's nothing to give to. There's no receiver. Oh, so God has to create a receiver in order to give. What's the receiver? Who's the receiver? That's the world. And this is like a very kind of fundamental Kabbalistic teaching that God creates the world in order to be mashpia, in order to give to the world, right? And we and the entire world are the recipients, or are the mikablim of that shefa, of that influence from God, that which God wants to give. Okay, but Kabbalah goes on and talks about these 10 sfirot, these 10 kind of spiritual vessels. They're not physical, but we talk about them as if they are physical. These 10 kind of emanations from God through which God creates the universe. And the Or Ein Sof, God's infinite light, gets kind of poured through these 10 vessels. The world is created in, these are the spiritual mechanics that Kabbalah talks about how the world gets created. And the world starts to get formed. But what happened? Something cosmically wrong took place, that this light was so powerful that the vessels couldn't contain the light, and they bursted. They broke. They shattered. It's called Shvirat HaKelim. These vessels shattered. And they're not physical, but we talk about them as if they are, as if these shards of these vessels now just flew all over the world, the universe, reality, whatever we want to call it, that was just being created, that was just being born. Now, again, taking a lot of things and putting them into a short amount of words. What's our job in this world? We look at this story, so to speak, from the Kabbalah, this explanation from the Kabbalah, and we see that right away, right from the beginning, when the world was created, there was brokenness in the world from the get-go, from the first seconds of the universe being created. There was brokenness already introduced. Now you can ask a million questions about that. Why? Why'd it have to be that way? Not for now. But there was brokenness introduced, and what's our job as humans in general, and Jews in specific? Our job is to pick up the broken pieces and to fix the world, to fix that brokenness that was in the world from the very, very beginning, as if the world was built with, brokenness built in. What do we call that in Hebrew? We call that tikkun olam, right? Fixing the world. This idea comes from Kabbalah. This idea that so many more Jews are aware of in our generation comes from the Kabbalah. Okay, I have one specific Kabbalah teacher that I learned from his teachings. He's talking about tikkun olam every other page. He talks about it. Everything. And okay, so let's just add on to this a little bit. Okay, so then how do we fix the world? Well, Judaism has a system of fixing the world. Right? You guys just put in great examples in the chat. Feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, housing the poor or the homeless, giving to the poor, being kind, taking care of the environment, becoming the best person I can be, all those things. I want to add one more level and layer to that. Judaism, okay, is a system of 613 ways how to fix the world. We're used to hearing 613 mitzvot, okay? And when we're in Hebrew school growing up as kids, they're called the commandments, and then you get to be a teenager, you're like, don't tell me what to do, right? You're not going to command me to do anything, right? And then as we get older, we struggle. What does that mean? A mitzvah, commandment, what is this all about? And then you get to the Kabbalah and you start to learn about the commandments or the mitzvot on a deeper level from the perspective of the Kabbalah. And you start to realize, oh my God, because the Kabbalah teaches, what are the mitzvot about? The Kabbalah teaches that the mitzvot, they are literally every single one of them, and most of them we can't do anymore because they have to do with the temple that once stood in Jerusalem. Most of the, more than half of the mitzvot we can't even do anymore. Those that we can still do, whether it's tzedakah, whether it's taking care of the poor, whether it's not speaking badly about other people, lashon hara, whether it's, Shabbat or kashrut, whatever, everything, every single mitzvah is another opportunity and another way and another means through which to fix the world. The world. Which means, and it sounds outrageous, right? To Jews and probably non-Jews alike. But when you look at the most fundamental, essential Kabbalistic teachings about Judaism, they teach that everything we're told, everything we are encouraged to do or taught to do in Judaism, it's not random. It's not like God just like trying to I don't know, play a power trip on us and try to control our lives. Every single aspect of the Jewish practice has a part and a place in fixing the entire world. Now that's obvious when it's don't speak badly about somebody, lashon hara. That's obvious when give tzedakah because I'm helping someone eat today. That's obvious. It's not so obvious, when I maybe choose to eat kosher, or choose to celebrate Shabbat, or blow the shofar in Rosh Hashanah, or countless other things. Put up a mezuzah. How is a mezuzah fixing the world? But in the depths of the depths, Kabbalah teaches us every single one of these things, every single one of these mitzvot, these actions, is playing a part in fixing the world. Why? And now here I'm going to another level of this teaching. And somebody said this already. Okay. And again, I don't know about you guys. I don't know you guys. Maybe this is all I know this stuff already. I don't know. I really don't know. But I wasn't taught any of this stuff growing up. Kabbalah teaches that really what we're doing in this world is we're fixing ourselves. That's the only thing we really could do, right? I can't fix you. You can't fix me. I can't really fix an entire community. There's a very famous saying from a rabbi of a few generations ago, Rabbi Salanter, who was the head of the Jewish Musar movement, which was a return to learning ethics from the Jewish perspective. And he said, I tried to change my city, and I realized I couldn't change my city. I tried to change my neighborhood. I couldn't change my neighborhood. I tried to change my family. I couldn't change my family. And then I realized the only person I can change is myself, right? And it's this idea, and this is mirrored in the teachings of the Kabbalah, that really what we're here to do is to fix ourselves, to as somebody said before, make ourselves into the best people we can possibly be. And when we each do that, we're changing the world, right? The world gets changed by people becoming better. Now, of course, it doesn't mean we shouldn't do all those great acts of kindness and giving to charities and discovering cures for all kinds of things. Of course, we keep doing those things. And that's where this idea is twofold in the Kabbalah, right? There's the inner work and there's the outer work, right? And the Kabbalah talks about this. Okay, there's the inner work that I need to do. Akiva, I need to be the best Akiva that I can be. And I know that there's still so much work that Akiva has to do to become the best Akiva that Akiva can be. Whether it's, not getting angry when something doesn't go my way, whether it's giving more, whether it's whatever it might be, right? We're also the only ones that can really know what we need to get better at if we're honest with ourselves. Looking in the mirror, or just being, after we might get angry at someone, whoa, where'd that come from? How do I understand why I did that? How do I maybe work on that and not do that again? And I'm not going to go into too many details, but growing up, I saw some people in my community who were just filled with anger. I mean, they were always getting angry, and it was destructive. And later on in life, when I reflected on that, I thought, that's an example of what happens when we don't work on ourselves, when we're not aware of the things that we need to get better at. right? That we're not self-aware to the point where, we realize that, yeah, we're not perfect. And we do need to improve, every single one of us. And the Kabbalah will tell us the reason we're born is because we have work to do on ourselves. The reason we're born is because we're not perfect, right? If anyone thinks that they're perfect, they wouldn't have been born. Because by the very fact that we're born means we still have work to do, right? We're still not there. And these are all from Kabbalistic teachings, okay? And so there's this inner part, and that's a lifetime journey, of course, of working on ourselves and becoming the best selves that we can become. And then there's the outer world. What can I do in the world? How can I affect the world? Now, of course, I can affect the world by being the best Akiva I can possibly be, but I can also affect the world through my work, through anything. And it doesn't matter what the work is. I had a teacher years ago. She taught me one of the most awesome life teachings. She said, choose one thing in life, dedicate your heart and soul to it, and one, it'll teach you everything you need to know. Excuse me. If anyone ever read the book Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, that might sound familiar. Okay. Okay. But in addition to that, she adds that it'll be the way through which you make the world a better place. And that doesn't matter if you are a shop owner, if you are a bus driver, if you are a teacher, if you are a doctor, it doesn't matter what it is. As long as whatever you do it with full heart and soul and mindfulness, and realize that this is the way that you can fix the world. This is the way that you can make the world a better place. I'll just give you a quick example. Okay, I remember years ago I was in the Israeli city, Afula. I was with a group of students. We were stopping there for dinner, and I needed to use the restroom. And I found this little building in the middle of the town, and it was a paid bathroom. You had to pay a couple shekels. Maybe you've experienced that in Israel. We still have that here and there. And there was a guy working in the place, and I went into the bathroom, and I'll be totally honest with you. I went into the bathroom, and I thought, wow, what a random job. What a strange job this guy has. He sits here all day, in the bathroom, collecting 2 shekels from everyone who comes in. And when I came out, he started talking to me, and we had a half an hour conversation about life. He told me about himself and the things that he's done and the experiences that he has gone through. And I'll just say I was affected by this man, right? I was even in that moment, I was positively changed by this person. And so here, even a bathroom attendant, he was using his corner of the world to talk to people and to bring goodness into the world and to help make people happy. And he did. And it really it had a real impact on me. And to this day, I remember him and that experience, right? So no matter what we do, right, we can change the world through how we do it. It's how we do it. It's not what we do. It's how we do it. Right? You can have a brain surgeon that is Mr. or Mrs. Anger and yelling at everyone in his or her life. Yeah, they're saving lives for sure, but they're also ruining lives, right? And you can have a bus driver who's just everyone hopes that, they get that bus driver when they step onto a bus, right? And there's so many ways, okay? So many ways. Let's go a little bit here. Wow, I'm realizing how we need 40 hours for this class. There's so much to share, but when we get to the end time, I'll just say whoever wants to or needs to go, totally, that's fine. And then I can stay on a few extra minutes if people want to continue. All right, but I don't want to feel everyone has to stay past a certain time. So that's that, right? This inner work and this outer work, this inner way of changing the world and this outer way of changing the world. Now, there's 2 more big topics that I want to focus on, okay? One of them is this. A big question comes up. People ask is well, how do I know what I'm supposed to do in the world? How do I know what's my way of changing the world, of impacting the world in a positive way? The best answer I've heard or thought of thus far in my life is you just know. I know that sounds like a cop-out, but it comes, I'll add to that you learn. As you live life more, you'll know. As you live life more and you get to know yourself better and you understand your strengths and your weaknesses, the things that you're attracted to, that's a sign. If you're really into something, that's probably a sign that you have a soul connection with that thing. And that might be a good sign that that's the way, at least one of the ways. It doesn't just have to be one way or one thing. That's one of the ways in which you can, and you're even brought into this world to make this world a better place, right? Because the Kabbalah says another very important and essential teaching. Okay, well, let me just back up 1 second before I get to that. The Kabbalah will say, right, everyone has a purpose, everyone has a reason for being here, or they would not have been born. Right? Again, how do we find that out? We live life, we get to know ourselves, we find out, we do those things, right? And let's be honest, it doesn't mean that everyone finds out, right? If someone is living a certain life and just they didn't have the blessing of certain teachers or people guiding their life and helping them, they might get to a certain age in their life and have a freak out, 40, 50, whatever age it is. And like, oh my God, I've been doing this my whole life, but I don't know why. And I don't even know what good has come out of it all these years that I've invested in it, And that's usually kind of like, and I don't say this in a negative way, that's usually a midlife crisis, right? And we usually people have a midlife crisis, we think like, oh, poor soul, right? That can be an amazing opportunity, right? To realize like, wait a minute, what I've been doing up until now hasn't been what I was supposed to be doing or what I could be doing or what I should be doing. Right. And could be this incredible life opportunity for somebody to now start a new path, go in a new direction that is more in tune with their soul, more in tune with what they were brought into this world to do, more in tune with what they can give to the world. And that's like the next step. I just said it, but I want to explain it a bit more. The Kabbalah teaches a lot all over the place and time after time that every single human being who is born into this world is born with a unique mission, different than any other person's mission, not only in their generation, throughout their generations. That every single human being is here for a reason where they wouldn't have been born, and here for a different reason. That what I'm here to accomplish is not what you're here to accomplish, and vice versa. And each of us is here to do something, to give something to the world. Like I look at it like a puzzle. We each hold a puzzle piece. We need to find that puzzle piece, right? We need to find where to put it, right? And then we need to put it in its place. And together we fix this world. Together we achieve Tikkun Olam. And again, these are all based on Kabbalistic teachings, right? So again, this idea of we're all in the world, right, to do something and something different than any other person in this world, right? I don't know if you guys remember Calvin and Hobbes, the cartoon, right, from back in the day that I used to run to the Sunday newspaper to read the Sunday comics, right? Do they even have Sunday comics anymore? I'm not sure. But Calvin and Hobbes, right? There was one of those one square Calvin and Hobbes that had Calvin saying, I know I'm worth something because God don't make no junk, right? And that's like such a Kabbalistic idea. It's like if I was born, that means I'm here for a reason and I have something to do and to accomplish and to give into this world. All right, let's take it a step further. Because I've often heard the question asked, well, what if someone doesn't know what they're supposed to do? What if they actually don't discover it? Oh, that's like, on a spiritual level, that's like on some level the worst thing ever, right? Because someone's brought into this world and they never discover what they're supposed to do in this world. Don't worry, Kabbalah has an answer, right? I think Kabbalah has an answer for almost anything, right? Kabbalah says that if a person does not accomplish his or her mission in a specific lifetime, guess what? They're brought back for another lifetime, right? And again, I don't have the time to do a Q&A with everybody here, but I've just from my own experience with students and just talking to people and teaching about these things, a lot of people don't know that Judaism believes in and teaches about reincarnation. And it's found in the Kabbalah. I mean, thousands of years ago already, Judaism was talking about reincarnation. It's not only the Eastern traditions. Judaism has a long tradition of teaching and talking about and believing in reincarnation. And in a nutshell, Kabbalah teaches that the whole reason for reincarnation is to help a soul continue on its journey. And whatever is not accomplished in one lifetime will be accomplished in future lifetimes, in a process. And that if we don't, and most souls, according to the Kabbalah, do not accomplish everything that it's supposed to accomplish in one lifetime, that's a very difficult task. So they're born again into this world, and again and again, until they fix all the different levels of their soul and accomplish and learn and go through all the things they need to go through in order to get to a place where they no longer need to be reincarnated. I want to pause here just for a moment because I just threw out a lot of stuff. I'm just going to take a couple of minutes. If anyone had any questions, they want to put it in the chat, I'll be happy to take a look. If not, no worries. But if you do, feel free. There's one last piece I'm going to share in this class. But just want to pause here just to see if anyone had any questions or want me to clarify anything or explain anything a little bit more. Okay, so far I see nothing. All right, we can visit it at the end. Okay, so Baba. All right, so I just want to share that I didn't know about reincarnation growing up. And even as I started getting into like other, spiritual paths, I didn't know that Judaism believed in reincarnation. It was only when I started to study the Kabbalah and more about Judaism at the age of 22, 23 that I came in touch with a Jewish understanding of reincarnation, which really blew my mind. I just didn't know about it. None of my teachers in Hebrew school and no one in my community had ever talked about that. And that was really meaningful for me. So someone just asked a question, really great. I just want to give attention to it. If God's light shattered, does that mean that God created the imperfect world purposefully? So long answer short, is that how you say it? Yes. That it was all done bikavanah. That, according to Kabbalah, there's no mistake emanating from God, right? And this is actually going to play into our last and probably most difficult part of this class, of this talk. But yes, that it was all b'kavanah, it was all purposefully, that it all happened, it had to happen for a reason. Okay, and maybe that's a perfect bridge. Actually, I see one other thing. The math of Kabbalah. Okay, so I happen to love math. Joan, when you say the math of Kabbalah, are you talking about gematria? Like the numerical value of letters and Jewish numerology? Are you talking about that? If you can just answer in the chat. If you are, yes. Okay. I mean, literally, don't even get me started with gematria, Jewish numerology, because we'll be here for hours. Literally, I can give a whole other class just on that. I love math. I grew up loving math. And when I found out Judaism loves math also and has this whole Jewish numerology thing to it called gematria, it was another one of those things I learned early on in my, when I was rediscovering Judaism. I was like, why didn't anyone ever tell me this stuff? So I love gematria. And again, for those who might not know about it, it's the idea that every letter has a number. Aleph is 1, Bet is 2, Gimel 3, so on. Yud is 10, Chaf is 20. You get to Kuf is 100. I'll give you an example. Hold on. Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you froze, but maybe it was just for me.
Oh, no, I think I was just doing one of these. I froze?
Yeah.
I believe so.
Oh, okay. I'm back.
15 seconds, something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay. Sorry. Good. Anyway, I'll give you a couple of quick examples, but know that there's a million examples here. One is there's so many things. The word sukkah, like the sukkah from Sukkot, sukkah. Okay, the numerical value of the word sukkah, all right, is 91. All right, samich is 60, vav is 6, chaf is 20, and hey is 5. That's 91. Okay. Now, what's 91 in gematria? 91 is also the gematria. Is also the Jewish. I'm sorry, the Jewish numerology, so to speak, of 2 of the holiest names of God. right? The Yud Kei Vav Kei, as we call it, which is a gematria of 26, and the Aleph Daled Nun Yud Adonai, which is 65. Okay, and the Yud Kei Vav Kei, I'm giving this over very briefly, but the Yud Kei Vav Kei name of God is like the aspect of God that's just beyond this world, right? And the Adonai name of God is the aspect of God that's very much in this world. And the Sukkah is all about bringing those two together. And that's why the numerical value of Sukkah is 91. The numerical value of these two names of God, very, very different representations of God coming together in the Sukkah, because the whole idea of Sukkot is about bringing the physical and the spiritual into one space together. And the Sukkah that we sit in, we don't just like hang out and like eat food and, play games. That's nice. But it's really like a spiritual chamber to experience the physical and the spiritual merging into one. I gave that over very briefly. It's coming from the Kabbalah, but just an example of Jewish numerology. I'll give over one more example, which will be a bridge to our last part of this talk, okay? And we are getting to the end of the hour. If anyone needs to leave, wants to leave, bavakasha, no hard feelings, don't worry, but I'm going to extend just for a few more minutes just to finish this last thought and take any questions. The first word of the Torah is Bereshit. Now, this one might feel like a little bit of a stretch. I totally get it. If you don't like it, that's fine, okay? I totally get it. But if you look at the word Bereshit, the first word of the Torah, do the numerical value of Bereshit, you get to the number 911. Okay? Now, this might be a bit more sensitive, and I apologize if this brings up any sensitivities for people. I really, really, really do apologize. But when I just said that number, 911, what did people think about? You can say it in the chat if you want. When I just said 911 is the numerical value of the first word of the Torah, what did people think about right away?
911.
911. Exactly. 911. That's when I did the numerical value for the first time of the first word of the Torah, Bereshit, which means in the beginning, which is beginning the entire Torah, the holiest text of Judaism, beginning the story of creation. I was blown away. I mean, I happen to like gematria, so that's why I get into this. Maybe somebody else would be like, whatever, it doesn't mean very much, and that's fine. But I do find meaning in the Jewish numerology. And I was just sitting there, what does that mean? Why that number, which means something so specific to our generation? And so here's a thought I had. Take it or leave it. I had the thought, and again, this is a bridge to the last thing I want to share, that God, and some people think it's coincidence, and that's fine, right? I can't prove it that it's not, right? And nobody can prove that it is. It's one of those things. It's like faith. You like it or you don't like it. You believe it, you don't believe it. It's totally fine. I love you either way, okay? But what I thought, was that God created the world, okay? And I'm using God a lot here. And again, I'm sorry, I'm sometimes oversensitive to people's different beliefs and over-apologetic. I don't think I'm being apologetic, but overly sensitive sometimes. But Kabbalah talks about God through and through. I mean, you can't really talk about Kabbalah without talking about God, all right? But the Kabbalah, okay, I'm sorry. Going back to my interpretation of this numerical value of the first word of the Torah, the thought that went through my head was that God created the universe, the world, okay, with full knowledge and with full awareness that things like 9/11 would one day happen, as much as that bothers us. And again, take it or leave it. You don't have to believe this thought if you don't want to. But that was the thought that went through my head, that God created the world with full prior knowledge that there would be bad things happening in this world. And yet God created the world nonetheless. Now that leaves us still with a lot of questions. I'm not saying that as an answer. I'm just using that as an interpretation using Jewish numerology, gematria. And that's a bridge to the last thing I want to share with us. And maybe the most difficult, probably, right? And so maybe I should have started with this, but maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe it's the best way to end this talk, and maybe it's not. But I felt like everything we talked about, we needed to talk about before we can try to tackle this last piece. And again, just know we have a few minutes to talk about it. It takes years to really grapple with these questions, and that's the classic and timeless question: why is there evil in the world? Why is there suffering? Why is there pain? I can't tell you how many times my heart has been broken and how many tears I've shed, and I'm sure many of you as well, just hearing about tragedies, just hearing about the pain and suffering that people go through. And I can't tell you how many times in my own life, my own prayers, and my own moments of silence, have asked God, why? I don't get it. Like, why? I believe in you. I believe in God, right? Why? Why did you have to create a world with so much pain and suffering being possible? Right? And I say to myself, when I share, when I teach about this stuff, I can, on an intellectual level, I can understand the role of evil, right? Free will, free choice, to the extent that I can understand those things. But what I can't understand, and I probably will never understand, right, is why to such an extent, right? Why do there have to be why do there have to be the possibility or the ability of humans to bring so much evil and so much pain and suffering into the world? Now, of course, the classic example is the Holocaust. And I'm not even going to pretend for a second that I have an answer to that. Okay, and there's certain things that we have no answers for, and we'll most likely never have answers for. But I do just want to share this because, this is a class about Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism and this deeper way of understanding things. Kabbalah, right, is very clear. Okay? And again, take it or leave it, like it or don't, believe it or don't, that's fine. But the Kabbalah itself, which is a section of Jewish thought, which is essential to understanding the breadth and the depth of Judaism and Jewish life and Jewish action and Jewish purpose and why we're here and what we're supposed to do in this world. Okay? Kabbalah teaches that everything happens for a reason. By the nature of God, everything happens for a reason. God is good. God is all good. Therefore, everything that emanates from God is good. Which means, and again, you don't have to believe this, but this is what Kabbalah teaches. Everything that emanates from God is good. Therefore, everything that happens in this world, which emanated from God, has a purpose and happens for a reason. And I know right now, if we unmuted, we'd have 57,000 challenges on that one. Of course, I would throw my own challenges in there. Don't worry, right? I'm not like putting me on like not the same side as you. There's so many challenges that we can bring up to that concept. So many questions. It angers us sometimes to hear that. But that's what Kabbalah teaches. Everything happens for a reason, right? And everything happens for a purpose. And everything happens for a good purpose. I'll give a simple, and I know this is a very simple example, okay? This is oversimplified completely. But I'll just give an example. That someone's driving through a city and there's a traffic jam. And the cars are like not moving at all. And this person's got to get to like an appointment, whatever it is, and he's freaking out and he's getting irate and he's getting angry and he's honking the horn and he's cursing and he's all these things. I mean, his blood pressure is rising and he's just like angry at the world and he's just, intense. And then finally the traffic breaks and his car moves on and his car moves past the place where something happened that was the cause of the traffic. And there's a person lying on the ground, either dying or dead. That was the reason for the traffic jam. If that guy knew before 5 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it was, however long he was sitting in traffic, that was the reason he was sitting in traffic, would he have become angry? Would he have become irate? Would he have focused so much on his appointment that he wanted to get to? Probably not. Right? He would have thought about life a little bit different in that moment. And that's just one like very simplified example I'm giving. But the reason I bring that up is that we don't know everything. We don't see the big picture. We don't know how all the pieces fit together. Kabbalah tries to help us to understand that. Right? But what Kabbalah does for sure share and teach and tries to encourage us to believe is that there is a bigger picture, there is a bigger story. Things do happen for a reason. And in the beginning, it all started good, and in the end, it will also all be good. And of course, when we bring up certain examples, like the Holocaust and other tragedies and atrocities that have happened to either individuals or to groups of people, how can we possibly answer that? But still, nonetheless, there exists this teaching in our tradition, in the Jewish tradition, right? Every time I use the word Kabbalah, by the way, I could have said Judaism. They're one and the same. From a Jewish perspective, from a Jewish traditional perspective, Kabbalah is not something separate from Judaism. It's Judaism. It's just a deeper understanding of Judaism. It's a deeper interpretation of Torah. It's a deeper interpretation of life. And it's a deeper look into life. All right. So again, historically, these are all essential teachings to Judaism. Right? Just Kabbalah is the area in which they are, present and found. Someone's saying, but the ultimate good still does not erase the pain and suffering of the innocent 100%. Right. And that's why, of course, someone can't say everything happens for a reason. All is one. And then pass like 20 people, in terrible pain and suffering in need of their help, and just say, it's all from God. Don't worry. Just understand, that like this is from God and God loves you and you're suffering for a reason. It's all going to be good in the end. No. Judaism says no. Judaism says act, give, help, take care. But at the same time, have this idea in the back of your head, this spiritual idea that there is a bigger story happening here, and everything does happen for a reason. There's a beautiful teaching I heard from the Kabbalah, at least from a teaching of a teacher who teaches the Kabbalah, and I love it. And this for me is Judaism. This for me sums up all of Judaism. That somebody else's physicality is my spirituality. Someone else's physical needs are my spiritual needs, right? When I help somebody out physically, food, shelter, care, a hug, a lending an ear, anything, whatever, that's my spiritual work. That's my spiritual experience. And that for me is very much what Kabbalah is teaching us, is to look at the world around us. And yes, we're seeing a physical world, but know that there's a spiritual story happening here. There's a spiritual realm, there's a spiritual level, there's many spiritual levels, right? And we're not always going to understand everything. We should be humble enough to know that. But at the same time, we look in the Torah, we see people like Abraham, challenging God. We're allowed to question. We are invited to question. I do it all the time. I'm telling you, like I said before, I love being Jewish. I love Judaism. And yet I still have like a million and one questions for why things happen the way they do in this world. And that's okay, because Judaism invites us to ask those questions and invites us to struggle with those questions, right? And we know, I think probably everyone here knows that that's so Jewish, right? So yeah, I don't know how to wrap this up, I'll be honest with you, but just want to say, those are a few essential teachings of Judaism from the Kabbalistic perspective, from Jewish mysticism. Maybe in this way, I'll wrap it up, which I believe when we study these things, when we come into contact with these things, when we go deeper with these concepts that we just briefly introduced here, we could really benefit personally from them. We can improve our lives, and at the same time know that it's not just about improving our lives, it's about improving the world, right? That we improve ourselves, we fix ourselves in order to fix the world. Right. And like, I don't know about you guys, but me growing up, I was raised in the classic Jewish American culture of go, study, get good grades, to get into a good college, to get a good job, to make a lot of money, to have a lot of stuff, and then you'll be happy. Right. That was the path that I was raised on. At some point in my life, I realized, wait a minute, there's another way, there's another path. And I kind of took a right turn and went in a different direction. And I really feel that that's what Judaism in general and Kabbalah in specific is teaching us. And it doesn't mean that you can't have a beautiful, fancy house, and it doesn't mean that you can't have $50 million in your bank account. But what are you going to do with that $50 million? Right? That's the question. Right? What are you going to do with your house? Right? Somebody can have a tiny little house and be more giving than someone with a huge mega mansion. Right? We know that. So just to maybe sum up that, these and other ideas of Kabbalah are all helping us, or meant to help us, to become better people, to become more spiritually aware, more spiritually connected, more aware of ourselves, more aware of the world, more aware of other people's needs, other people's suffering, other people's, cries for help. But to understand the really big picture, that it's all about tikkun olam. It's all about making this world a better place. And that every single day I wake up, I have an opportunity to do many things that will help people, that will help the world, and to keep on giving, right? And maybe I'll just end with a quote from a friend of mine in Tzfat. I don't know, maybe some of you have met him. His name is Avram Lowenthal. He's an artist in Tzfat. Many people go to Tzfat, go to visit his gallery. He's a Kabbalistic artist. He uses concepts of Kabbalah in his art, Avram Lowenthal. And I've heard him speak to many groups before. And he says, what's the Messiah? What's the Messianic age? What's the Mashiach? That's, Judaism talks so much about. It's when we all wake up in the morning and we ask, it sounds a little bit like JFK, right? But is instead of asking, what can I get from the world? We ask, what can I give to the world? And the more and more people that ask that question, what can I give to the world today? The world changes. The world does become a better place. The world does become more mitukan, more fixed, right? And that's how we change reality. And I really do believe it's just learning Judaism for 20 years plus now and getting into Kabbalah. The more I learn, the more I see that it's really so much about this. And that this idea of tikkun olam has deep, deep roots, both historically and spiritually in the Jewish tradition. My friends, thank you so much for listening to me for over an hour now. I'm happy to take a couple of questions. I do have a call in 15 minutes, but if anyone wanted to ask a question in the chat, I'm happy to hang around to answer. Can we have another session on Gematria? I'd be more than happy to talk to Julia. I don't know what's planned, but that's I've taught many classes just about that as well.
Thank you so much, Akiva. Again, we're getting a lot of questions. Also, people are asking how they can take you for regular classes on this. Are there other classes we can take of yours?
That's very sweet.
I guess on your website, we would be able to find that kind of thing out.
So my website, which I'm putting in again, and also you'll find more of my Israel education classes, but I do a lot of Jewish Judaism, classes on Judaism, especially Jewish spirituality classes. So for that, you can just directly get in touch with me. Here's my email again, Akiva Gersh at yahoo.com. Yes, I still do have Yahoo. I like it a lot. It works really well for me. And, but yeah, really feel, somebody asked me in a direct message, but I'll share it out loud. Was Akiva your original given name? Okay. So I'll just say really quickly that it was given to me at my bris, at my Brit Milah. Chona Akiva is my full Hebrew name, but I did go by an English name for the first 22 years of my life. I used my Hebrew name in Hebrew school because we were told to, but then I forgot about it, literally forgot about it. Maybe I'll just end with a story because it's always nice to end with stories, right? When I was 19 years old and I was already on the spiritual journey that I mentioned before, I was out on the west coast of America, and I was on it was like a study abroad program, but it just was in America instead of abroad. And we were on a backpacking trip, and it was a 7-day backpacking trip along the Pacific Ocean. And every day we camped in a new place, and it was really beautiful. But one day we decided to stay in camp for 2 nights instead of 1. So we had more time. We can just explore the area. We weren't so pressured to leave. And because this was a program where we're like this very tight community and we were around each other all the time, any moment that I had to break free to be by myself, I took. So when we decided to stay at this campground, I went on a long walk by myself down the beach without my heavy backpack on my back. And I was thinking about nothing specific, and definitely nothing specific Jewishly. And out of nowhere, again, I'm 19 years old. My Jewish education stopped when I was 13. As soon as I could, I dropped out of Hebrew school, like all my friends. And I'm 19 years old now. And out of nowhere, I mean, literally out of nowhere, not thinking about anything Jewish, my Hebrew name pops into my head, Chona Akiva. And I did one of these. I literally thought somebody was whispering into my ear. That's how it felt. And after 6 years of not using it, I realized I had a Hebrew name. And I realized that I forgot that I had a Hebrew name. And while I was already on the spiritual journey and starting to lightly get in touch with Judaism again, when I discovered my Hebrew name again, I was it was literally one of the best moments of my life. And it felt so, I don't know how to explain it so well, but it felt like there was this whole new side of myself that I had not yet explored. That my Hebrew name was like my deepest name. So I'll just tell you, I went by Andrew. My English name is Andrew. Nobody in my life calls me that anymore. I probably don't look like an Andrew to you. That might be a little shocking. But I went by Andrew for the first 22 years of my life. When I remembered Akiva, right away, first of all, I realized I had this thought, one day I'm going to use this name. Again, at that point, if you asked me, do you want to become religious? I'd be like, no way, right? But I had a feeling that I was going to use this name. It felt like ethnic. It felt like a spiritual name, and I really liked that. And of course, one day, a few years later, I decided to use that name as my official name. So if you look at my Israeli passport, it says Akiva. If you look at my American passport, it does still say Andrew. Yeah, so that's my little name story. So I don't know. I'm just gonna. I see. Wow, interesting. That's a really interesting comment that who made about 911. Solomon. Beautiful. Thank you.
Solomon, I'm just going to read it because if someone can't see the chat, they don't know what you just read.
Oh, okay.
So it says IC 911 as emergency call, basically for help. Hence, you go to the Torah learning for help. That's what.
So I'll just maybe end with this because I do have a phone call to be on it in just a few minutes. But I think this is a nice way to end. Someone asked me this directly, so I won't say the person's name, but this person asked me. This person said, our local Chabad couple use Kabbalah in their daily life and teach their children how to use its principles in a positive way. It's a foreign concept to me. Do you use Kabbalah in this manner? Long story, very short. Long answer, very short. Yes. Like absolutely yes. My life would be different if I had never studied Kabbalah, and my life would be different if I didn't challenge myself every single day to use the teachings of the Kabbalah to guide my life. Now, it doesn't mean I'm always successful, right? I fail and I fall all the time. I still get angry and jealous and stubborn at times and don't understand why things are happening not according to the way I'd want them to happen. Of course, I'm a human being, but very much yes. I'd even say one of the most important things in my life is to really to strive on a daily level to bring these ideas into my life and to try to remember them as much as I could. Because I find when I remember them, my life is better. I feel like I'm a better person, and I feel like I can do more good in the world. And those kind of three phases, I feel like are a really important part of it, right? I might not understand everything. I might not have an answer for everything. That's fine. I still feel pain and sadness when I see pain and suffering in the world. But it does kind of keep me into a certain frame of mind, if I can say it that way, that helps me to move on with happiness, with joy, with faith, and with a little bit of understanding, and motivation to try to do my part in making this world the best world it could be. So I think that's a nice place to end. So again, I'll say thank you to everybody. It was a real joy to be here and to get to share these kind of teachings with you.
Thank you so
much.
Steve, did you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you very much, Akiva.
And Julia's
I joined maybe 5 minutes ago, and I was listening very carefully. Sorry I could not join earlier. Thank you very much. It was very impressive. Me and Ilana, we had a little, chatting just between the two of us, and the bottom line was that no, God is not all good. But this is a different topic. Thank you for everything. It was really, really interesting and inspiring. And I think whatever could make person a better person is appreciated. So it could be the way of Kabbalah, it could be another way of, I don't know, doesn't matter, but just be a better person. And if this is the bottom line, so it's just amazing. And go ahead for your phone call and enjoy it. And I can see that you really got to go. So thank you so much for joining us. And we'll talk.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
Shalom, shalom. Thank you for coming again.
Bye-bye.
And Julia, do you want to say next week's or Thursday's program?
Yeah. Okay, guys. I really like. I would like to listen more to Akiva. It was just the edge of the iceberg. It was just it's not even the nutshell. It's so much less than that. And yeah, well, there's so much to say. People spend their entire life studying Kabbalah, and yes, some of them became better people because of that. So let's adopt. And by the way, I don't know if you know, I don't know if it was mentioned, but today, this is the first day of non-compulsory masks in Israel. Okay, you don't have to wear a mask any longer, even indoors, outdoors, no matter where. So it is a great thing, and we have a new government, you know, which is 3 days old. Okay, so that's for now. The day after tomorrow, I would like to invite you to join me in the Western Wall tunnels. One of the most amazing, one of the most complicated, difficult to understand, just amazing places. Right underneath the Muslim quarter along the Western Wall, with all these zars and synagogues and deep entrances into another layer, and we have 3,000 years in one well-looking structure. You're welcome to join me the day after tomorrow. So this is the Western Wall Tunnels tour, and next week we will be talking about architecture in Tel Aviv, from Bauhaus to Penthouse, with Stav. If you remember, she gave a presentation about graffiti in Tel Aviv, the modern art, and you seem to like it. So she will be talking to us about Bauhaus. And then next week, Thursday, we will be driving along the Lebanese border. We already did half of it. We were driving from Rosh Hanikra to Har Adir, which is the west part of the northern road along the Lebanese border. And then next week, we will be continuing from Mount Adir all the way to Metula. So you're welcome for that as well, including cherry plantation.
Question, Julia.
Yeah. Hey, Ina, we have to talk. Yeah, we did not talk eventually. Okay, tomorrow.
So, thank you. Question is, I just read it that this weekend will be Open House Tel Aviv. That's an architectural kind of celebration. Do you know about this?
No, they normally have it every year, but I don't know the details. Pamela, maybe you as a Tel Aviver?
I don't know. I don't know the specifics of when it is, but if Ina read that it was this way, yeah, Ina, you'll love it. You walk around and you can go into people's houses. And
in New York, in New York, I volunteered for 2 years for the Open House New York. It's a wonderful architectural festival all over the world.
Yes, you can do it
the whole weekend.
And Ina, when you come into my apartment, if you look at my outside building, it is a Bauhaus, and the picture of it is in lots of books.
Beautiful,
so,
wow.
Beautiful. Yes, beautiful.
Okay.
Beautiful house, yes.
We have to mention it to Stav. Maybe she has your house on the presentation and she does know that it's yours.
It could be. There's a postcard of it that's in the Bauhaus museum, or the Bauhaus.
What's your address? What is your address?
9 Gordon.
Okay, I will check with her. Okay.
She's probably going to do them on Rothschild, because most are, around Rothschild.
Yeah, well, there's more than just Rothschild. There's Bauhaus all over Israel, including your house. Okay, yeah. So, guys, any comments on this presentation? Did he mention Mount Meron tragedy? He did. Yeah,
he
mentioned its significance.
He mentioned when he studied in Sfat, he looks at Mount Meron.
Yeah, but he was going to go into it more, but I think
you ran out of time. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Steve, how are you doing?
It's very good.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad. I don't know if gematria is a fascinating topic, but I don't know if this is interesting enough for enough people. What do you think?
Very interesting. At least one evening.
Yeah, 1 hour. Okay, not more than that. What do you think, Pamela, Ilana, Esther, who is here?
I think so. I think it's very good.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I think everybody can look at, you're going to have people who are going to say, as someone said in the chat, it's a coincidence. You just never know. I mean, I have a thing of gematria that when my boyfriend gives his lectures about the Dakar, and you of course know the story. So at the end, he reads from Tehillim, and Tehillim, Samach Tet, which is 69, and the whole psalm. He only reads the beginning of the psalm, the first few lines, and it's about the rising waters, and I have fallen in the waters, and the waters enveloped me, and all this stuff. And there were 69 submariners on the Dakar. So, you know, it's so there is a lot, but you know, some people say coincidence.
Yeah, I would suggest we go for it. It'll attract a different audience.
I mean, even if not,
it will attract a different
kind of audience,
which is healthy. So let's go for it. Sure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, even if people say it's coincidence and they don't believe it, it's still something interesting to learn about.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
it's something to learn. It doesn't hurt to learn.
Right.
Right. Okay, great.
Very good.
So,
Well, thanks for coming,
we'll go
Julia.
for it. Yeah, sorry for being so late, but
No problem.
I was doing my best.
We love it when people work for a living.
Yeah, this is very important. Well, what I'm doing here is sort of, but actual touring was very nice. It was a bunch of daycare workers celebrating the recent new invention by Naamat, by the way, of a like a special appreciation day for daycare workers.
Oh.
And so we had a little tour, and they were playing drums, and then we had dinner. So they were happy.
Is there a special appreciation day for tour guides?
No, well, I think we deserve it, especially after being unemployed for so long. But no, not as far as I know. But you know, we have a new government, we have a new minister of tourism, so and we have a new minister of health. So who knows? And Steve, we are looking forward to seeing you here, full size. That's
Yes.
about time, and all of you.
We're ready. Yeah. Well, very good. Well, thank you. Let's go into schmooze mode for those folks who want to hang around and discuss matters.
Yeah. So I say goodbye. I have to make a call to a person who goes to work early morning.
Bye, Ina.
Bye. Thank you.
Okay.